How did all this start? Well, let's go back. Let's go back to the very beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, miscreants, mollifiers, welcome to the show. I am the anonymous librarian. You can call me L, if you can spell it. If you're good enough to spell it, woo! This week, you're not getting the wrap up yet for May. Why? Because I still haven't finished the last book for May. Remember, I filmed this early in the week. This is the second. While I'm filming this, it's the 2nd of May. I will finish the last book now. And then I want to marinate in it before I talk to you about it. So the wrap up will be coming next week. But I thought this week, let's go on a little bit of a journey. Journey back into the past. How did I become a reader? What was my first reads? What had the most impact on me? Stuff like that. And why am I in reading so many different genres and stuff? Why am I all over the place? And I think you can really, the origins is already and where I started reading. You can find it. And then we can go from there. So I am actually sharing a bit. I hope you better be nice to me this week. You better be nice. So it's an education, but I've decided to share with you. I've decided to share a little bit of me with you. Okay? No mean comments. Okay, actually give some mean comments. I don't mind some mean comments. It will be better than no comments. And then I can give you some mean comments back. And we can start roasting each other in the comment section. Because we have nothing better to do with our lives. Let's continue. So, I just took kind of a selection of books. Most of these books I read while I was in high school. That's really when I started reading. Except for 2 that was later in life, but it's still early. It was still when I was just between when I was young. I was still in my early 20s when I read them, and it will make sense. It will make sense when we get there. Why I included them? Why are you asking questions already? Why? Okay. Now. Am I going to surprise anybody with this list? Not necessarily. Some of these are very obvious. Others might be like, oh, that's interesting, but it's not. Nothing is really that surprising or strange. I was very much of the time reader and or stuff that were popular and well known. Yeah. So let's start. Let's begin. Let's begin from the very beginning. What was the very first book I read? And I was 15 years old and I got this for my birthday, which was wild for my parents to do. They decided to buy this for me for my birthday, even though I've never read a book before. I feel like they were, we want to get him into reading. And they were like, no, if only we can get him into reading. Later on they regretted that because then reading was all I wanted to do. And it was, of course, boom, 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 boom. Harry Potter. Which one? So this is obviously not the books I actually read. It just came out. Yes, and I bought this the books I had when I grew up with. I then lent to my nephews, and then got circulated around the family. And now some of them are lost, so I had to buy some new ones. And it was kind of a gift to them. So, the first Harry Potter I read, like every millennial, we all started with Harry Potter. It feels like, or like 70% of us was Prisoner of Azkaban. I love this, by the way. This is my collection. This is the Ravenclaw Harry Potter Hogwarts House Editions Ravenclaw, and Ravenclaw stuff is wit, learning, wisdom. And that look cool. That's really cool. Yeah, okay, so first I read the first book I got for my 15th birthday, I believe, maybe my 14th, but I'm pretty sure it was my 15th. There it is, The Prisoner of Azkaban. And I got it, and my birthday is in the winter, which is your summer if you're in America and Europe as well. Yeah, you suck. Winter on my birthday, so I got it during the winter break, the holidays, and I'm pretty sure I finished it before I went back to school. Just fell in love with it. Awesome. So at that point, why Azkaban was kind of perfect, and I'm pretty sure my brother had something to do with it. I don't think my dad and my mom realized which book to buy. I'm pretty sure my brother told them, okay, you should get this one, because the movies for Philosopher's Stone and for Chamber of Secrets have already come out, and everybody knew I was a big fan of those movies. I loved them. So I guess they thought like, yeah, let's just buy him the third book, and he can read the third book and just go out without reading the first two. Which is maybe one of the few series where you can actually do that, because the first two books and the movie are pretty close. Especially the first book and the movie are pretty close. The second one has a little bit different stuff, but not too much. Now, just for it to get really weird, my whole Harry Potter reading experience was a mess. So yeah, read Prisoner of Azkaban first. Then of course I wanted to read more Harry Potter after that was done. The first 5 was out at that stage. So no. But I wasn't interested in getting the first 2 because I said, I've seen the movies, why would I want to buy the books? Listen, I was 15, okay? I was a dumb teenager. Accept it. You know how I feel about teenagers? I was one of them, okay? So the obvious next one then would have been, if I'm not gonna get him, is get the Goblet of Fire, right? Guess what? The thing that it wasn't really a bookstore. It was like a supply store, but also sold some books that were in the small town where I lived. Did not have Goblet of Fire. They did have Order of Phoenix. So I read Prisoner of Azkaban, then Order of the Phoenix. Then after that we got Goblet of Fire. After Goblet of Fire, then I think like it was a couple of years, and the release came for. I think I'm not sure. Was it when I was 16, but late in my 16th, or was it when? In any case, I read Half-Blood Prince. After Half-Blood Prince, I went back and bought the first 2, wanting to buy them. Read Philosopher's Stone, read Chamber of Secrets. They were kind of disappointing, but this is teenage, right? Because if you've read the better stuff, obviously, if you read, they are really meant to be read from this to that. And then last, of course, everybody, I was waiting in anticipation for the Deathly Hallows. Even though we went to get it on it was a sports day Saturday, when it was like I think it had come out like just a week before, but we went to a bigger city to do sport. And like after my match, we had to like go before the place closed, just to make sure, because I needed to get my Harry Potter. And this one I read in 2 days, Half-Blood Prince, and this one I read in 2.5 days, the Deathly Hallows. Loved it. I mean, it's still like if you just want to get into reading, the way they were written was so perfect. It was just. And I was really the stuff in. Obviously, I read stuff in between. The first 3 books I read was basically, it was Prisoner of Azkaban, Order of the Phoenix, and then Goblet of Fire. Now I remember I loved Prisoner of Azkaban way more than Order of the Phoenix. Just felt very long at that stage. Now I'll probably breeze through it, even though but it was so much longer than ours. And then when I went back to Goblet of Fire, I really enjoyed Goblet of Fire. But you kind of know everything is going to happen to some degree, because it's already spoiled in Order of Phoenix. So my Harry Potter journey was a mess, but I loved it. It really was the one. Now this is the only book I think I read. This book I'm going to pick up now was the only book I read in between the first 3 Harry Potters, while I was waiting to buy the next ones. There might have been something else, but I'm pretty sure it was just this one. And it's a non-fiction book, The Captains, by, I don't know who read it, Edward Griffiths. Now, I'm South African. If you didn't know, now you know. If the accent didn't give it away, if you don't know your accent in the world, then you're not educated, and that's why I'm here to help educate you. This tells the story. It's called The Captains because it kind of tells the story of the Springbok rugby team, which is the national South African rugby team, from when it started. But it tells it through each of the captains that was the captain for whatever years now. And it kind of goes into South African history a lot as well because there's like even stuff you'd be surprised at the stuff that you find in here. There's even like in a group like the Freemason group. We had a Broederbond, which is kind of like the Freemasons, which is kind of like they like in a private group that tries to control stuff. There was like a 10-year or 15-year period where they were basically making the captains and saying if you weren't part of this group, you couldn't be captain of this Springboks. It was fascinating to me. That was so strange. And then obviously around the political upheaval, because during apartheid now you have the team, it's not allowed to go play in many countries, doesn't want them to go play. How they had to get through it, they couldn't play. Like the one of them is the Besiege, where they played in New Zealand, where they were literally attacked on the field and stuff like that because they represented South African. South Africa was the apartheid regime then, and they were the pariah of the world, and for good reason. They deserved to be the pariah of the world back then. But yeah. And this was obviously, I did not enjoy it as much as that, but I did find it fascinating. And this was my first non-fiction. So at least there was early on a non-fiction that I read. My dog's barking. I'm sure it's somebody in the street. Enjoy, Miranda. Yeah. But I really did enjoy it. But it was always like, okay, this is not going to flow as quickly as I read it. It's quite slower. Also, I mean, it's a lot. And but I did enjoy it because I loved rugby. I was playing rugby at the time. It was just fun. So that's how I already got early into non-fiction. Non-fiction. That's fine. She's just having a conversation with the dogs next door. Now, so it had come to this point that I had already read. Now, I will be honest. Some of these books now, I'm probably not going to I can't remember the exact order I read them in. We're just going to do the best we can with what we have. But so now what had happened? Yeah, so I had read basically the Harry Potters that were out. I'd read the Captains because I had that. And I like, yeah. Where is that from? Oh, so many interruptions today. Nobody wants. No, doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not important. Let's put it right there. And so we went to visit my brother and his wife, or maybe they were not married then, back then. It must have been close. Anyway, went to one of the big malls in Johannesburg. Went for my first time to exclusive books, and I was loving Harry Potter. So what was Harry Potter? Harry Potter was fantasy. And then back then they would just call it the science fiction section. Everything was still, it was just, there was non-fiction, fiction, and science fiction, and maybe young adult. That was what they were calling it stuff. So I went to know science fiction. That's what I want. I don't want fiction. I want some mundane fiction. I want science fiction. I want the crazy stuff. I want wars and orcs and, Harry Potter had given me an itch and I wanted to go. So I went through the science fiction thing, looked at a bunch of books there. I had like 4 or 5 I picked out, and my dad said I could get 2. So I kind of took it to my dad, like, I want this one, maybe this one, which ones can I get? And my dad said, no, I'll buy you this one and this one. And the reason and I'll show you now the 2 that he chose. The reason he chose those 2 is because for him, at least on those 2 covers, the creatures looked human. Whereas on the other, there was like orcs and elves and weird stuff. These ones looked human, so my dad was like, he doesn't want him to go into the crazy. But of course, that's exactly what I wanted. So he chose this. And these were the 2 books I ended up leaving there with. First, Dragons of the Fallen Sun by Margaret Weiss Tracy on a dragon lance. This is the first book in the War of Souls. War of Souls, Volume 1. Beautiful cover, by the way. Love that cover. That was the one. And the other one was, oh yeah, Midnight Tides by Stephen Erickson, the 5th book in the Malazan series. It wasn't never clear for me. It didn't show because they did not put like in the number of books on it, which I'm glad. I'm glad I actually ended up buying this one. Now there's a car going off. what is going on today? We're just gonna have to fight through. Hopefully that thing will stop making noise soon. Now that's even annoying Miranda. Interruptions. Hey, it stopped for now. Yeah, so it was these two. Now, if you know, they might have humans on it, but in them you will find everything: crazy magic, crazy different creatures of all kinds, and wild. I'm not sure. I think I read this one first. I think I read Dragons Over Fallen Sun first. Really enjoyed it. The Dragonlance is very fun and easy to read, from what I remember. I had a great time with it. Really good. I did end up finishing the War of Souls series. I did buy the second and third one. Did enjoy. I remember enjoying this a lot. I remember enjoying the second one. The third one I remember not enjoying as much. I felt a little bit disappointed by the ending. I should go read it again, see what it's like. But yeah, I remember enjoying this a lot. But now this one was way more formative, right? There's a scene earlier in this one, like it's a seance scene. And people say like Malazan's confusing, but it's magic. How much do you need to understand about magic? And you will understand it eventually. You understand enough. You understand well enough. So as like a 15 going on 16-year-old, reading this was a wild experience. And it was definitely where I would read Harry Potter would fly through, and even Dragonlance I could fly through. This was a lot slower to read, but it gripped me and it pulled me in. And Troll Sengar on the one side and Fidel Bedok on the other side, those two characters, I never experienced characters I like in Troll. I felt connected to, not like, but like they felt so real for me and so interesting and so unique. Fidel with his crazy brilliance and funny and quips and stuff. Troll with his inner monologues and like what is going on. And I remember and how it plays with how you see yourself compared to how other people see you, and just the crazy vivid scenes that Erickson conjured in here. And this was also the first book from there might have been some others, but this was the first book. And there wasn't the good guys and the bad guys in this book. It was just like different groups going against each other and what do they want, and it gave such a broad tapestry and stuff. And I will say in some ways, I mean, it also hurt reading this that early, because it definitely did damage to my ability to appreciate other fantasy, especially because a teenager is horrible, right? And I was a teenager, so this is the greatest thing. If other stuff cannot do what this do, then you hate it. You can't say, oh, but it's not as good as this, but it's still really great. Nah, it's like awful. But then but now you'd think like, oh, I'd go straight into getting, because I love this so much. Why did you get the other Dragonlance books? Why don't you go straight into getting the other stuff? So then I was like, okay, I want to read the whole series in order, in publication order. This was around, I think this Bone Hunters might just be coming out. Well, this was like a year before Bone Hunters come out or something like that. I'm not sure about. I also think, but that was back in the time when stuff would not necessarily come out at the same time in South Africa as it already came out in like America and Europe and wherever. But here's the thing is, I went to the bookstores, I couldn't find Gardens of the Moon. I was crazy, I had memories of it, but I couldn't find Gardens of the Moon, and I was like, I want Gardens of the Moon, and I can read it. Now, I still feel I was very lucky to read Midnight Tides first. I still think that's the book you should actually read first. People are not going to agree with me, but that is my thing. I think, like, even though it's the fifth book in the series, it doesn't spoil anything that comes before it. In fact, some of the books that come before it spoil what happens in Midnight Tides. I think if you read Midnight Tides first, or at least before House of Change, that's important. But yeah, so I'd love that. I couldn't find Gardens of the Moon. I actually found one once, and there was a binding problem that I saw, and I showed it to the people and say, yeah, no, but we don't have an open one. And then it was like still a year more. I only found that when I was 18. I finally found Gardens of the Moon. So in between this, I was looking for other stuff to read. Now, of course, at this point, I had heard about the certain Mr. Stephen King. And I was talking about Mr. Stephen King. And I was like, yeah, I want to read some Stephen King. And so the first Stephen King book I ended up getting. So and this is like in a, yeah, this is at 16. This is now really maybe. It's obviously not this version, not this version. The version I got, and I didn't buy it. I got it loaned to me by my sister-in-law's dad, who had the one. It was a hardcover, but it was an amazing cover. This is cool, by the way. I don't. This is one of the few tie-in book covers that I think is really good. I think they did it perfect for this. But that was the one where they had the house on Newbold Street with the Pennywise face on the house of Newbold Street, like and coming out like as if it wants to buy. So it was a really great cover, creepy ass cover. I remember reading this thing. So I lived in res, like during the weeks. Only went to see your family on the weekend when I was in school. So yeah, because so my family, my mom was like, no, I don't want these kids around all the time. Also, we were like, it was an hour plus from the city. We went to school at and where my parents farm. So it just was gonna have to drive like crazy to do it. This book, and I remember in the beginning, like it felt very slow and deliberate and hard to read for a person of that age, but it still sucked me in. But it scared the crap out of me as well. Man, I was in res. I'm a 16-year-old. I'm not supposed to be scared of anything. I was like legitimately, if I had to go to the bathroom and there was some lights off and some, because at some point when everybody's outside, I'm the one sitting in my room reading books. I have people, what are you doing? He's reading. He's reading again. If there was like a light, if it was like later and there's a light switch off and you can't see into that room, I would like try and jump across the door of that room, but just jump because I didn't I was convinced something would come out. I always remember even later on, and when I would at home in the bathroom, I wouldn't want to look into the mirror if I had to go to the bathroom at night because I was convinced Pennywise would be there looking at me. Yeah, and it was so it was. I remember like feeling like there's this one way. Some of the stuff that stayed with me a lot. There's a bullying scene with the Ben Hanscom kid, like the chubby boy, that really disturbed me. And the Patrick Hockstetter, and I would love Patrick Hockstetter was for me maybe one of the most interesting and fascinating characters ever. I really his story stood out for me, and I really thought in my mind that happened really early in the book. But then when I look at it here in the thing, it actually happens quite late in the book. So it's like, and then just everything around it, like, and there's a scope and a world and really creepiness and horror. And I was instantly a Stephen King fan. And so now, in between that, like I found different seasons at some point, and I read specifically the Shawshank Redemption because I wanted to watch the movie. So I read the book, just the Shawshank Redemption. I haven't read the other ones like The Body yet. I'm still going to do it. And I found Misery as well at the public library in our small town. Really enjoyed that. I haven't got it at the public library or the school library. One of those two. Not sure which one I got it at. But those two always had like, both of them had like 3 Stephen King books. But since I was loving fantasy, and I was loving Stephen King, the obvious next one was, boom, The Dark Tower. Of course. And since I was waiting for Harry Potter to come out, I'd read it, loved it. I couldn't find Gardens of the Moon. I was finishing the Dragonlance, the Dwarf Souls. I ended up for like the next few years just reading and I finished it in high school. No, in Matric, which is 18, yeah. Matric is 18, grade 12. I finished The Last of the Dark Tower. Just loved it. Just some crazy, it's such weird and crazy fantasy. Especially, this book is still kind of normal, Western side. The second book, I remember The Drawing of the Free and the Wastelands. You know what? Is that what it's called? What is it called? Did I have it in here? My name's written here, but that's not my writing that's that nice. It must be my mom or somebody who wrote that to me. Yeah, it's The Wastelands. So it's The Drawing of Freedom in the Wasteland. Oh, I remember. I really like the crazy and the kookiness and the weird stuff that happens in the as the world expands. I love them. Wisdom Glass, not my favorite because of the giant ass flashback. I feel like that was like because the stuff I was enjoying was the and that's the least part of that story. But I still loved it. Loved all of it. Finished the Dark Tower when I was grade 12. Got obsessed with it. And it just gave me a love for Stephen King. I will say one of this is the thing with Steven Erikson and Stephen King. I've never DNF'd one of their books that I've started. I've DNF'd a lot of books when I was at that age, and especially after school when I was playing video games. But when I started, like I think Dead House Grace, I might have had like where I put it down for a month or two, but then just continued it afterwards. But all the other ones, when I started it, I would continue till I was done. Where there's a lot of other stuff and other writers, like Wilbur Smith. I started many Wilbur Smith books and then DNF'd them. I just think I was not, although I did enjoy them, I think I was too young to really appreciate what he was doing and how he was building it. And the slow, methodical pace often some of those ones took at the beginning. But in between that, so what was other stuff I'm reading? So now, I was very much, at that time, the thing that was blowing up as well. While Harry Potter had already blown up, this was the Da Vinci Code, yeah, by Dan Brown. So obviously this has got me into more of the thriller, the pop stuff. I did read the Da Vinci Code, really enjoyed it. I don't have my copy anymore. Hindsight, I'm gonna pick up more Dan Brown. Picked up Digital Fortress. I really enjoyed Digital Fortress back then. I want to see if I read it now, if it ends up. Dan Brown also has a very easy to read style of writing, and I really enjoyed Digital Fortress. And this was like the first time I was like in. This was before like Edward Snowden and like it was just fully exposed that it's just full surveillance state and the NSA is just looking at everybody's everything. And this was already dealing with that and like yes, yeah, like oh, so, and then like oh, it was like when you start oh, so Digital Fortress wasn't lying, it was actually like that. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the Da Vinci Code. Then I picked up Deception Point from Dan Brown, which felt like a bit of I didn't enjoy Deception Point that much. I don't know. I finished it, but I didn't enjoy it that much. I thought there was some interesting stuff there, but and then I picked up Angels and Demons, but it never really got going. I read maybe like the first 60, 70 pages, and then I never picked it up. I think it was too late. I already read the Da Vinci Code of that, and there was other stuff I was planning on reading. I should probably go back at some point, read them all. But yeah, this one I want to reread because I remember enjoying this one quite a bit. But now, so I was still looking, and here and there I was picking up series that I didn't enjoy. But then I finally picked up, okay, yeah. But of course then, Lord of the Rings was so major, right? The films, and you loved it. So, but what story did I not read it? So I went and got The Hobbit. And The Hobbit is such a great. I remember enjoying reading this as well. Sure, and what blew me away is about how much actually happens in this short book. It was like event after event after event. It just feels like chaos. It just goes, and it's just exciting. And like, how do you put so much into such a book? And this was the one that really, I really loved this white Tolkien. Then my brother gave me the old Lord of the Rings as a gift a couple of years later. And I couldn't get past the pipe read because, of course, I was still young and foolish and whatever. But I remember loving this. It's just, yeah. And I felt like this, the Hobbit is definitely, felt like if you enjoyed Azkaban and those, the Hobbit and like Goblet of Fire, the Hobbit is perfect for you. You're gonna love this. And it gave me, this was like and this tells you where I was struggling to find other stuff I like in fantasy because I felt like Malazan had ruined fantasy for me. I just wanted to read more Malazan because nothing kind of felt like it reached those highs. This one still, I blew through it, I enjoyed it, and it's like, yeah, just to show that it is actually what it is. But then I was like looking for, there was this one, I remember always seeing this cover and wanting it. in the fantasy, and reading it, and it sounded like, yeah, this could be interesting. And it was not in the broad fantasy world like Malice and Us, so it could be. It was, and I think this was, I read this at a perfect time. I think I was around 17. John Husserl, The Amulet of Samarkand, the first book in the Bartimaeus trilogy. I don't know. This book blew me away when I read it the first time. First of all, you get more than one POV, which obviously I was used to, but from something that's more at a teen or young adult, this definitely is different. It felt Harry Potterish, but more a grittier world with more implications. And I remember just falling in love with Nathaniel, the little kid, growing up, telling his story. That this world, it's a magical world, but unlike Harry Potter, where the people don't know, where the ordinary people don't know, and the wizards and the witches. Here, the wizards and witches are there, and every day they're part of history, and they're ruling the world. They're part of the government. They're in our world, but it's our world with magic. Nathaniel, great. Bartimaeus, the things that happened to Nathaniel, it felt much harsher than what's happening to Harry, and like where Harry had like more reasonable people looking after him, or like in not muses, like the Gandalf, Dumbledore type character. You know what I mean. The mentor type character. The mentor character in this. It gave me like he was not a nice guy necessarily. Although you kind of feel like he has good art, but he just doesn't know how to. And then Bartimaeus, the genie, they call them genies, like which kind of demons that they summon. Bartimaeus was such a great, funny character, and Bartimaeus, and what Bartimaeus, if I remember this correctly, Bartimaeus' stuff is written in first person, while the Nathaniel parts are written in third person. I love this book so much. I thought, like, why are nobody adapting this? This would make such a great movie, spellbinding brilliantly. I did read the other ones, Gollum's Eye and Ptolemy's Gate. I didn't enjoy them, but this is still my favorite in that series, from what I remember. Really, really my favorite. And it just, it took from me what Harry Potter did, and it just gave it that grind and like real more consequences, and a bit more visceral, and a bit more violent, and grown up, maybe mature, maybe, but like rough, like less compromising, and it's probably not going to end. And Harry Potter already has the dark stuff in this one. I went way darker in that way. Loved it though. Fantastic read. These are classic literature that I read also in high school. One that I picked up, and one that we were assigned to read. Assigning people to read stuff, this is not nice. So the one that I had seen the movie Capote, right? And I really enjoyed it. I think I actually went to watch it in the cinemas. I started to get an art house kick when it was, and my sister took me, and I think we went to watch Capote together. Yeah. And so now, obviously, I knew that. Now, In Cold Blood is obviously what it's kind of based on, the book there, or it tells the story of how Capote wrote In Cold Blood. But what I found fascinating, because I kept hearing them, like Harper Lee plays a big part in that story. And they talked about To Kill a Mockingbird. And then I started hearing more about To Kill a Mockingbird. So I went to pick up To Kill It. When I saw it being in the bookstore, I said, I want to read this. I've heard good things. I remember loving this so much, because the kids and the stuff and the way they saw it, I really should read it again. I had a really great time with this book. It was like the way, and this was like seeing the ordinary world from a kid's perspective. And I was like, and the magic of that, and interesting, and how the story is told from that. What was the girl's name? I can't even remember. Scout. Through the eyes of your Scout, and Jem Finch. I loved it. I really found it a vivid and beautiful story. Really enjoyed it. The one we were assigned to read, and this was intrigue, was Animal Farm. Animal Farm. Now, I will say this. I still think Animal Farm is maybe the most useful fiction book that's ever written. If you want to understand how the world works and runs and politics and stuff like that, read Animal Farm. It's an allegory. It's one of the few allegories that really work. And it's perfect to just tell people, if you want somebody to, yeah, this is how you get bullshit. And this is how things start with noble ideas and just go to crap, and like greed and stuff takes over. And people have this self-interest at heart. But this, and I was enjoying it, but not enjoying it, because there was like, they had this thing where like the one year, the grade 12s would read Animal Farm, and the next year they'd read My Family and Other Animals. And we'd all heard, and my brother talked about how much he loves My Family and Other Animals. We all heard, and we had said, oh, why couldn't we read that? We all wanted to read that, we had to read Animal Farm. And even though it was fun, but like, you know, this is stupid, talking animals, and because, you know, teenagers. And as I was loving this one, I was like, okay, I can see the merit in this, but why? This should be like for kids and 10-year-old kids to read, not for us. Yeah. And yet, as much as I loved this one, and I still think, and I think it was influential and just beautiful, this one ended up staying with me years after, and that's why I rebought it and reread it. It was like, because I remember this, and yeah, I know. And the more you read and learn of the world, the more you clear how apt Animal Farm actually was about what it said about society, about, you can say, power, about government, about, you know, it might start as something nice, and then it would morph and greed would come in and just, like, you know, really have fun with this. Or really remember, as much as I didn't like it then, really stuck with me, and it's one of my favorite reads of all time. And I will add this, I think anybody should read this. It is brilliant. And what's brilliant about Animal Farm is you really can read it when you are young, older, it doesn't matter, the age doesn't matter. You will get at least something out of it and understand it. Now that was all high school. Now the last two I want to talk about, and it was other stuff I was reading during this. These were definitely after high school, and even I was on the farm yet, I wasn't even in university. The first one is a piece of paper, because I lost it. But this is where my non-fiction love really came in. So at this point, The Captains that I showed you earlier was basically the only non-fiction I'd ever read. I did not read any other non-fiction. Now, I'm gonna put it here or somewhere. I'll get a cover because I don't have this anymore. The Dueling Neurosurgeons by Sam Keen is the book's name. And this tells the story of... And let me just say, how did I get to non-fiction, first of all? I was trying other stuff in the fantasy and even in fiction, and it just wasn't kicking with me because I was still like... There was still some of the later... I was still waiting for the later, like Dust of Dreams and The Crippled God to come out in the Malazan. And just nothing else lived up to that for me. So I just wanted to read Malazan. Everything else I started, I was like, yeah, put it down. I was reading a bit of Ian C. Estelmont. I was getting in there. I was reading his stuff when I started. But then it had to be Malazan or Malazan adjacent for me to appreciate it. So nothing other than fiction or sci-fi or fantasy just did it for me at that point. So that I migrated, like, I want to know more about other stuff, and I was curious and I wanted to learn. So I migrated to non-fiction, and the Dueling Neurosurgeons was one of the first, and basically the first I picked up. And I wish I still had it. And there's a bunch of them there. It was the Dueling Neurosurgeons, it was The Age of Absurdity, and it was like the Trolley Dilemma. And I don't have any of them anymore because I borrowed them to people, say, you should read this is quite interesting, and it never got returned to me. And that's annoying. And now I know to be very selective about who I lend stuff to, which is mostly nobody. I have like one friend, I'll lend him comic books and manga, and that's all I'll lend him, because I know I'll get back, because that's what he reads. He doesn't read that stuff. The Dueling Neurosurgeons tells the history of neuroscience. It's actually a very misleading, it's a very, very misleading title. Because the dueling neurosurgeons never duel. They're not against each other. They're actually working together. Okay, but there was a duel that went bad with a lance going through a guy's brain, stuff like, and it tells like how they were trying to figure out and stuff, and the history of neuroscience and how different stuff was like discovered. The Phineas guy that got the thing through the thing that flew through his head, like yeah, his story and how that helped with brain discoveries. There was a Holback guy that was blind but an explorer. How he used to and how that helped. There was a thing about like a fake story written about an amputee that got lost both his a quadriplegic amputee. I don't know what they call it, but that had apparently lost both his arms and both legs in the Civil War. He hadn't. He hadn't. Or was it the First World War? He hadn't. He hadn't. But it was a fake story. But it helped like and explain stuff about phantom limbs and stuff, even modern stuff like the quirks of the brain and how they discovered it. Like with the people that were eating human flesh and they got sick and stuff, all that stuff. I love that book. It's still one of my favorite of all time non-fiction books. I would love to read it again, even though it's probably outdated because it's neuroscience. Neuroscience gets more and more. In the Age of Absurdity was philosophy. The Trolley Problem was also philosophy. I got into from there. I started getting into quantum mechanics and stuff like that. I wanted to know more about science and stuff. But then the other thing is like history. History I also want to know about. And one of the fascinating characters in South African history that I wanted to learn more about was Jan Smuts. Jan Smuts because I heard a lot about Jan Smuts. Jan Smuts is a very unique character in the white South African or in Afrikaner history. And he was prime minister twice. He was a very intelligent man. He had a lot of influence in the world. He was a general in East Africa during World War One, and he was on the cabinet of Britain, also helping on the war cabinet for Britain during the First World War and the Second World War. He was instrumental in starting the League of Nations and then later on the United Nations. So this was the first book I got of Jan Smuts, Man of Courage and Vision, Jan Smuts by Anthony Lennon. Now this is kind of a breezy one. It focuses mostly on the Versailles Treaty and the discussions there and Smuts' role there. Smuts was very against the idea of punishing Germany too hard because it said it would burgeon resentment and stuff like that, and it would like many others have said, like the First World War and the treaty kind of set up the Second World War, the displeasure that would reign in Britain. So he's kind of seen as like predicting to what was going to happen if Germany was too harshly, I don't know, punished for the First World War. Because also the South African, after the Anglo-Boer War, the South African rebels, they weren't rebels really, they defended, but they lost against the British Empire. The Transvaal and the Orange Free State lost. They kind of got a sweetheart deal that helped them rebuild and stuff, and they wanted to, and Jan Smuts wanted to see something similar for Germany so that the nation can rebuild itself, instead of what we ended up getting, like this resentment. I found it fascinating, interesting, and the monologues and stuff, and the treaty itself, and the different characters now. And this got me into like more, I wanted more about history. I've read a bunch of Jan Smuts stuff here. I've already read two this year, that if you've watched my updates. And then just more history of South Africa and history of the world and everything. And it burgeoned, so it ended up having this one with the Dueling Neuroscience, got me into the science part. The philosophy I read a bit, and then I want to read the science more. And then it was science and history. And that's kind of how it ended up with this craziness where I am obsessed with non-fiction, fantasy and sci-fi, classics, fiction, and a little bit of everything. Like the fiction one was like came back later. We're like, no, I will give that to BookTube. Like they got me back into a lot more of that stuff. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff here. I want to read more of that, especially historical fiction. I think I'm going to enjoy it, and I am having fun. I am really enjoying it. So that is how it all started. That was my early journey into books, and I've become a book. So I wasn't always this magnificent genius, crushing it, reading 7 books a month, like from Ulysses to what is like I have Winnie the Pooh here. I'm gonna read Winnie the Pooh at some point. I'm gonna love it. I know this, but like instant all of Malazan, read Malazan twice. The fact that I read Malazan twice, I'm so happy about it. The second read just broadens it so much because you can see all the things and more of how it all came from one to the end. It's one of those books, and I'll definitely do a third reread, but it does cost me some time getting as much of the other stuff as I could. And getting me to appreciate stuff. And now I'm a reader. Now I'm a full-time reader. Full-time. And this was how it started. And this was how I ended up like accidentally picking up stuff here and there, or like so, and made me like want to get a little bit of everything and enjoy it. So that's how. How did you start? What was your first book you read? What was the instrumental books that got you into reading and reading more? Is it as good a list as mine? Probably not. You suck at reading, don't you? Don't you? Maybe you're better than me. Maybe better than me. Maybe you're crushing it as well. Well, let me know if you're crushing it. Are you also a millennial that started with Harry Potter like the rest of us? Like the rest of us? Did you read? I saw a post from somebody on Instagram like Generation X was like basically like the reason Generation X is the way they are and they have the sense of humor they are because most of them read a Stephen King book way too young. And then there was like a millennial lady that almost said, does that make me, I'm a millennial, but does that make me Generation X? I also read a Stephen King book. I think the fact that I read it as young as I did, like it made it like, it put a very high bar on what I could tolerate stuff. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'm meandering now. This was my journey. This was my early journey. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed taking you on this. Actually, I'm in kind of a good mood. I don't want to scream at you this week. I just wanted to share this with you. Please share what yours was. I'll try to be nice about it. I'll try to be nice about it. I'm not gonna scream at you if you read Percy Jackson. I won't. I've never read Percy Jackson, so I can't be a judge of that. I saw the movies and didn't like it. Maybe I should watch the TV show, they said it better, but let's not. This is a positive channel. I am positive about books and negative about people. See, I got my priorities right. You see what I'm saying? Never mind. That is enough. I am the Anonymous Librarian. You can call me Al. Like, subscribe, share with the whole planet. Rewatch it until we get to 1 billion views or 1 billion hours watched. Something like that. I don't know. Whichever one comes first. Pretty sure 1 billion views comes before 1 billion hours watched. Just keep doing it. Because you know it's the right thing to do. You know it's the right thing to do. Bye. Have some fun. And let me know in the comments. What have you been reading? I don't get a lot of comments because it's a new channel. But I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. Let's go on this journey together. Hey, if you're nice to me, we might even do a body read. I might even do a body read with you if you're nice to me. Probably not.